you want to be able to train every single player perfectly? Look no further, I'll tell you how. Here comes Pepe. Welcome everybody! Training a player is pretty much always the same procedure. Once you've learned for yourself how it works, it'll be super easy. Don't be afraid, everyone can do this for real. Just because I read this so many times, no, the total overall score your player has does not have to be as high as possible. This is a myth and a trap, and in this video I'll show you why and how absurd it is. Let's start with the basics. Here you can see how many points you have available, and below are the categories which you can spend them on. At the beginning, every level up costs exactly 1 progression point. For every 4 points you put in a category, this category then becomes 1 point more expensive. So if you have 4 points in defense, the 5th point will cost 2 instead of 1, the 9th point 3, and so on. The stats of the player you see here are without any manager boost. So if you have a good manager, the player will get like +2 in almost all relevant stats. So now at this point, that is the most important question. You have to ask this yourself whenever you level up a player. What do I want and expect from this player? What is his role within my team? How do I want him to be so he is better than whoever he will replace? As you can see, there isn't really a generally valid way to perfectly level a player. You might play different than I do. Your Costa Curta might have a completely different role in your team than mine. In my case, I want him to be a strong defensive center back, and what makes him better than my current center backs is that not only he's just as good defensively, but he's also faster. On top of that, I want to use him for long balls to my offensive players, and I also still want to be able to use him as a defensive fullback if necessary. Let's go! Obviously, we need defending. Once we reach 7 points, one of the stats reaches 97. This means that since the manager boost will bring it to 99, this stat now no longer benefits from our training. Just so you know about this, usually this could be a reason to stop putting points in this category because it's getting less efficient, but since his defensive stats are still way too low, it makes sense to keep putting points there in this case. Let's stay with 8 for now and start with aerial strength, which we also need plenty of as a center back. We go to 8 because that's the last value where we only play 2 instead of 3 points. He shouldn't really need any more than this. As I want the speed and the stamina comes in handy as well, we also use 8 at lower body strength. Since we have still so many points available, let's go back to defending and use 16 points there. That should be enough for what I want him to do in my team. For the remaining points, I go with dexterity because acceleration can be important in tight situations in and around your box. Although I want him to be a better passer than my current defenders, I spent no points on it because he's already extremely good there. So you see, this player pretty much covers the description of what I want. I've played many games with him this way and I'm super happy. After applying the training, the manager boost now shows, by the way. His overall is 98, remember this. Let's make a different build now and assume pace isn't as important for us, but we want to give him even more raw defensive power. As defense is at 16 already, every single point will cost 5. So if we want to add 2 more points, we need 10 progression points. This build is a bit slower, but stronger defensively. It's a viable build. Overall score is 97. Again, remember. So now, let's assume we need a really offensively minded fullback with an attacking instruction on him. We still need solid defense for him, but our main focus will be more on the offensive stats. We actually stay at 7 in defense this time. As I've said, the 8th point would overcap defensive engagement and therefore be less efficient. 4 in aerial strength is enough. As you know, the first 4 points are the most efficient ones. Physical contact is always good to have, and jumping and heading is useful for fullbacks. Lower body strength should be at 12 points because speed and stamina are key stats for an offensive fullback. 8 points for dexterity. Attacking awareness isn't all too important, but acceleration and balance come in really handy. We also need 8 at dribbling because all 3 skills matter here, especially the dribbling skill itself. The remaining points all go into passing, making this a solid build for low passes and crosses. Now we have a good offensive fullback. You see, this build shows 100 overall points even if used as a center back. Remember the other 2? The first first build had 98, the second one 97 overall score. But there is no way that the current build is a better center back than the first or the second, despite having higher overall score. The reason for this is that the overall score shown is always for the main position of the player, in this case left fullback, and does not change even if you use the player in a different position. But that's not the only reason why overall score is not a very reliable metric. The other reason is that it's simply a summary of how the game calculates and weighs skills towards a single position. The game doesn't know how you intend to use the player. Anyway, let's continue. Something else I'd recommend is that if a player is really bad at a certain skill, many times it's better to leave that skill as it is and try to play around it in-game. In Neymar's case, he is terrible at passing, but even if you put points into it, he will always stay terrible because he's starting out just too low. I think it's smarter to just leave this skill and use the points in more important areas and avoid making any crazy passes in-game. So basically you make him better at what he's already very good at and try to use him in a way that favors the good skills, not the bad ones. Let me show you one more example that I came across a few days ago with this player, Wan-Bissaka. His main purpose on my team is defending. Sometimes after gaining possession with him, I dribble in the empty area to win some space because he's pretty fast. So I checked his build and realized that I actually had 6 points in dribbling. That's quite a lot considering I mostly use him defensively. On the other hand, he had only 3 points in aerial strength. While winning aerial duels is not among the top priorities for fullbacks, having a high physical contact stat is, because that one is pretty relevant in ground duels. I wasn't sure whether it was worth moving points from dribbling to aerial strength, so what I did was I skimmed through my last 4 games to check out how often I actually do relevant dribblings offensively with this player. Turns out it's only like once every other game, so I decided to give my player the additional physical contact instead. The stats for aerial duels aren't bad for him either, because many times he will face small wingers, where even with his stats, he'll be the better one in the air. What I want to show you with this example is, only you can know what role your player has and how you actually use him. You know your playstyle better than anyone whose videos you might be watching, except for mine of course. Just trust yourself. If you're not sure, watch your own gameplay and you'll easily be able to find the perfect training for your player. I hope this helped you. I'd love if you subscribed or gave me a like. If you have any questions, feel free to comment. Until then guys, take it easy. Shaka.